Good. So the rundown, what we want to talk to you about right now is many different kinds. Rundown, the hot box, the pickle, whatever you want to call it. You can look on the website. And what we want to do over the next 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, is we want to tear it apart for you, give you some tools, some tricks, maybe to take back with you for the next time, or that when this may happen to you for the first time, what you should be doing, what you could be doing, and how you could rely on your partner when you're by yourself. So we want you to visualize, take the journey with us as Sarah and I talk about the different things along the way. We're going to break this down into four little categories. And we're going to talk to you today about positioning, where to be. Sorry about that. We're going to break it down to communication responsibilities, multi-umpire versus the single umpire system, and then learning from it, and then the discussion. Okay, so we're just going to, Sarah, over to you for positioning.
Merci, Don. So as much as we don't, want to talk about where you should be and what exactly you should be doing, because we all know it, we learn it, or we review it every year. There's a few key points that needs to be kept in mind when it comes to positioning, because we want to be in the good spot, right? So let's just go back to basics so we're all on the same page. Obviously, it's a rundown. It's all going to be happening all at once in one spot. So what's important is obviously you want to keep all four elements in front of you. Obviously, the runner, defensive player, the base, and most importantly, the ball. Why the ball? Well, the ball will lead you to the play, right? If the ball goes left, you'll want to go move left. If the ball goes right, you go right. But in order to keep a global vision of all that, don't forget to stay 12, 15 feet away from the play. That'll allow you to, like I said, keep a global vision and not be focused just on one thing. How'd you do it? Pretty simple. We've all been there. So starting position, we're usually in the same spot, but we'll see a few video extracts from to show it. But what's important is, whenever the play happens, we're in the action. There's all kind of intensity going on. And let's say this is the runner and that's us. We want to make sure we move in a parallel line with the play. Usually we'll go parallel the first time, and then we tend to move really close to the play, which will be something we'll want to avoid in order to keep everything in sight. So as long as all those key elements are kept in mind, it should make the rundown play much easier, because it's just another play after all, right? The other very important thing to keep in mind is communication and which umpire gets what are our responsibilities, right, Don?
Exactly. So and as we lead into this, Sarah and I are going to show two videos, as you can see from the screen, one that's good and one maybe not so good, because we can never say it's bad, right? So how can we improve? Sarah, I've talked about communication. So what needs to happen in what we've seen in the past, and you need to realize what's happening quickly. And when it does, when you realize that this rundown is going to happen, communicate with your partner, what we say, both verbally and physically. So what do I mean by that? I got it. I got this side, and you're talking back and forth, and you can even point to which bag you might have in order to get into that proper position. So you can even say, I've got outside, the other person can say, I got inside. So you know which way to move, so you have everything covered. But communication doesn't stop there. What needs to happen is throughout, because some of us or some of you may have been in a rundown that lasts a good 3 to 5 minutes if it's going back and forth. You may be involved in multiple runners in rundowns. So communication is key. It has to happen for as long as communication needs to happen for as long as it's happening, and talking back and forth. And then that way, you know who has what, who needs to be in what position, and who has what responsibilities. So Sarah Ev went through some in the positioning, some keeping the 4 elements in front of you, keeping the specifically the ball and the player and watching. But there are some responsibilities that you have as an umpire, depending where you are in the rundown, whether the play is coming towards you, going away from you. But some tricks or some tips that we want to pass along to you that just to keep in mind as this is developing or actually happening. Angle over distance. So as you change directions, because you're going to be going back and forth, don't forget to preserve the angles that you need to keep those things in front of you, and as it gets to a base. So when we say angle over distance, but you still need to keep that distance away. You need to stay with the play, but that distance needs to be back far enough so you can see everything. And that's going to get complicated as you go back and forth and you're traveling. It's going to be difficult, but if you keep moving and you keep just on the, on your feet and moving around, you'll be fine. When in the rundown itself, the umpire that usually makes the call is whereas the runner is approaching towards, but not always. You might have the tag on the back of the player. You might have something happening in the background. Those are your responsibilities, so you have to stay on top of it. One of the main things that we've seen happen in rundowns and that you're really responsible for is obstruction. You must remain alert where obstruction can happen, especially when you have multiple runners coming in to the play. Not runners, sorry, fielders. So sometimes we've seen up towards 4 to 6 fielders getting in there, depending on how long it's lasting for. So you really need to see where that obstruction happens and then call it and then bring it down when it doesn't, when it's off. Responsibilities, sometimes there's a 3-4 umpire system. Don't think you're out of it if you're not involved in the actual rundown itself. Those officials that are standing, not involved in it, still have a responsibility as well. There might be other things happening. Other runners may be on the diamond that you have to watch. You're also watching the rundown as well to help in case there's a conversation that has to happen afterwards. So make sure that you maybe not involved in the rundown, but you do. Slow pitch officials out there, the difference between the fast pitch and the slow pitch on a rundown is when the play is finally finished in slow pitch, be ready to call that time to kill the play and get everything calmed down after a very intense or heated rundown. Give your time to breathe in order to consider on that tight rundown. Okay, so what we're going to do now is Sarah's going to run you through 2 videos. I'm going to show the good one first, and you'll see different things. If Sarah wants it paused, we'll pause it and she could talk about it. So the first one will be what we're looking at as good mechanics, good communication, and really, really where they know their responsibilities.
So basically the videos are, if you just pause it for a sec, Don.
Yeah, paused.
The videos are just basically a summary of what we both talked about. That's how in these ones, that's how you want to do it in the best case scenario. But yeah, so on this first clip, pay attention to the second base umpire. We'll watch it first. There's no audio on it, so don't worry. And then we'll rewind it back and pause on key elements. So go ahead, Don. All right, so that was a very standard, if I can say, rundown situation. If we play it from the start now, and looking at the second base umpire. So we know how we talked about distance, but also angle over distance in a way. So stop it there, Don. As you can see, like the base umpire is, at a good distance to see everything. He has the ball, the runner, defensive player, and even the base, just in case he needs it in sight. But also he's positioned right where the possible tag will happen. And he's moving parallel to everything. So if you play it again, right? And then he's moving, following the ball again, and there he goes, keeping his distance, and there goes the play. All right, so it kind of summarized pretty much everything. He was at the right place, right time, and he didn't rush anything, which is kind of difficult sometimes. And so on this second clip here, we want to look at the third base umpire, because he's really waiting for the ball to lead him basically to the play. And there's a lot happening in that one. So if you play it, Don. So umpire is at third base, nothing's going on right here. He's just waiting. Now pause it, Don. So as you can see, I don't know if you want to jump in here, Don, talk about communication, because it's kind of obvious what the third base umpire is doing here.
Exactly, and this is the one scenario we really wanted to show you where, and I'm pretty sure they're verbally as well, but physical speaks 1,000 words, and you can see where the third base umpire here on this side is actually pointing to where they have responsibility for. Very key, and you can see the second base umpire where they're can see in the line of sight where that communication is actually happening.
Now, perfect. So the play is coming towards him. He's moving. And now pause it again, Don. As you can see, the third base umpire, and it's something we didn't talk about it before, but the third base umpire was like behind the baseline, so outside of the infield, if I can say. What you want to do in the best case scenario is you want one umpire to be inside and one umpire to be outside. In this case, the plate umpire is obviously outside, looking at whatever may happen on this side of, let's say, the line. That umpire, obviously it takes experience, but he was aware that a second play might happen. So when he got the chance, he just went from being outside, rotated inside, and there he was. So now both sides of the field are covered. So third base umpire, again, as an angle on whatever might happen on the chest of the runner, and then when the runner turns around, then he's kind of blind. So that's why you want to have one umpire on the outside and one umpire on the inside. Anything you want to add on that one, Don? I'm sure they looked at each other. There's a few seconds where we don't see what's happening.
And you can see where he needed, the third base umpire needed to come inside, one for the positioning of inside outside, but as well as where the play is coming to. If they stayed on the outside of the bag in foul territory or even in fair territory on the outside, they wouldn't have had all the elements in front of them. So that just takes the experience to keep remembering responsibilities and positioning. And then I'm really sure they communicated as well. Okay, so good.
All right, and unfortunately, it's not over. So right now, third base umpire, how we just talked about having someone inside, outside to get an angle and everything. There's moments where you just can't move. So you try your best to cover the most that you can. But again, it comes down to communication. In my opinion, communication over everything on, hey, he's yours now, or, I got it.
Yeah, 100% talk. That's what I had said. Never stop communicating. And you can see with the multiple runners there, it's a perfect example of what I was trying to say is you need to adjust, but always communicate. And we have one more here.
And that one is an example of a single umpire situation.
And what you can see where the single umpire is that the home plate umpire is keeping on the outside because they still have the responsibility in case the ball gets by for the call at home. Is that where you can see what's happening?
So it's obviously slightly different because you cannot like spend, I don't know, 30 or 40 seconds just running back and forth to try and get, you know, the best angle possible. But you have to, in that situation, you have to compromise, right? And communication, well, you're by yourself, right? So anything you wanted to add on
Yeah,
that one?
I'll expand on that in the next, after we do the slide, after we do the videos, we'll talk about multi versus single, and I'll expand on the single a little bit after that.
Sounds good. So now we saw like 3 overall good example of how you should do it. And now the next 2, they're not bad, but there's definitely improvement. So that video will play, I think it has like 3 replays with different angles. And you want to see at the 2 base umpires. Now they had the luxury to be at least 3 umpires on that game. And they didn't quite take advantage of it. So they're, you know, mostly static, not moving too much, and maybe covering something like 6 or 7 feet around first base, around second base. If you compare to the very first video where the second base umpire is really following the play, these 2 are, you know, they're moving a little bit, but mostly looking at what's going on. And Don, if you pause it right there.
Oh, pause it. Yeah. Go.
You know, it's clear that they might be missing something. So whatever happened left, like towards the home plate, whatever happens there, none of them can have a clear view. So as long as they stay on their side, that's no problem. They'll see everything, but they will be blind for split seconds or even maybe a little longer. So that's why you want to be ideally 1 umpire out, 1 umpire in, so that you can see everything.
Right, and what you could see is that the gentleman on first base had time to get on the inside, but they weren't thinking of their responsibilities. They got tied into the actual rundown itself. And sometimes what happens as umpires is we become spectators. And I've done it, I'll admit it, you know, like, wow, what a good rundown. Oh, I'm in this play. You have to remember your responsibilities. On top of that, what I said, good thing that there was 3 umpire system here, because what is the home plate umpire doing right now is that they're standing back near home plate, maybe just out in front, and they're watching the whole thing in front. So at least they have that. But on a 2 umpire system, important to get that in and out system going.
And we talked about communication. These 2 guys, they pretty much didn't look at each other, didn't talk, didn't do anything. So they kind of put themselves in that not too good positioning or situation, right? And the other one is another video where, you know, home plate umpire and third base umpire, they do what they can, right? They're, you know, kind of they have the right angle for the plays, but everything that happens in between the bases is kind of not covered. And I don't know if you saw, but the second base umpire, I'm not sure he knows exactly where he is. I don't know if you want to play it again, Don, but you saw the difference there. The other ones were kind of obvious. That one is obvious for other reasons. But like third base umpire, he's got the angle and everything. But if a tag was to happen in between bases, you know, no one's there. So they can do something, but there's obviously stuff that they will not see or that they won't see properly.
But can you see the tag? Can the umpire see the tag being, and this is opposite of the first video where we saw the umpire actually get into fair territory inside the diamond because the home plate umpire is on the outside. So a little bit of difference there, but we do get trapped, and it's pretty evident. So those are 2 videos that we saw. And so we did talk about multi-umpire versus single umpire a little bit, but Sarah, do you have anything to add about multi-umpires?
I think we covered it, just because there's obviously more we can find about it visually. But just keep in mind that you're at least two people working together on the diamond, so you want to communicate. Communication really is key when it comes down to a rundown. And again, if you can move and make sure that you cover as much as you can, that's ideal. But again, you have to communicate it in order to make it happen.
Right. And in a single umpire system, a lot harder, because you're by yourself. And this happens quite a bit. Minor ball, slow pitch, you're by yourself. And while the key there is to get out from behind the plate if you can, because you may have a runner on third and the rundown is between first and second. So you still have to be responsible for that runner on third. So don't go out too far. What you're trying to do is just keep everything in front of you, more distance than anything, because you now have to have the whole field in front of you. Very important, and experience will help with everything. So those are two not so good and really good. So we can always learn from our different stuff. Sarah, do you have anything to add about learning from it?
Well, obviously, if the play happens right at this moment, there's no need to wait until we get to our car to change, or we get back to the changing room if it's more official, let's say. But one important thing is to kind of replay it in your head, remembering what went good and what went wrong, or what could be improved. And then in between innings with your partners, if there's two or three, it's good to talk about it. Again, it comes down to communication between umpires, but it's good to talk about it, because it may happen some of the time in the game, and you want to react differently to it. You want to improve, and that's key here. You want to talk about it. Obviously, you can do it between innings, but that discussion may be extended in the parking lot, where you can talk a little longer about it. What can you do? What needs to be improved, basically. And Don, anything else? Any other time you can bring it up?
Well, for sure. You discuss between your crew. You can bring it up at a clinic, at meetings with your associations. You want to discuss with it, because some rundowns will be perfect, some rundowns won't, and we can always learn from it. And that's through discussion with people that have been there. There is no textbook rundown. But the responsibilities are there. Communication is there. You'll have a successive rundown, as they say. When you're in the hot box, you'll be able to get out of it successfully. Sarah, Ev, any closing comments?
Well, I think we said it quite often. Again, it comes down to communication. It's one play where you really want to talk to each other's or look at each other's. You want to make it work. To me, that's the main point to remember here.
Perfect. So from Sarah, Evan, to you, all of you, we hope that you were able to take a few tricks, a few maybe some tools to put in your toolbox of officiating. 20 minutes worth of discussion, reference the rundown. It's just going to happen. When it does, we hope that we gave you enough little tricks there to say what your responsibilities are. And if I can leave you with a parting shot, it's communicate. And if you're by yourself, it's a great conversation to have. So thank you very much, Sarah, to take the time with me, and Virtuablue. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Don and Sarah Ev. We do have a few minutes for questions from the group. If anybody has a question, we can do it one of two ways. You can throw your question in the chat and we can read it out loud for Don and Sarah Ev, or we can turn our camera on and turn that microphone and ask away. So anyone with a couple questions or a question for Don and Sarah Ev about what they heard? Anyone?
Whew, that was easy.
Well, I mean,
Hi, Scott. It's Mitch. I've got a question for them.
Very good. Ask away, Mitch.
Okay, great. Thanks, Don. Thanks, Dave. Much appreciated. Question, can you maybe take a moment? Don't want to catch you off guard here, but just explain, like, Don, you said that often obstruction happens under that circumstance. Can you maybe just take us through the execution of the obstruction call in a rundown, given that there's other runners moving around the diamond, there could be, and whether or not to call it a dead ball right away or to wait. Can you maybe one of you take us through executing an obstruction call in a rundown circumstance?
For sure. Sarah, do you want to take this one?
Well, one thing is obviously if you see there's an obstruction, and I'll let you develop a little more on it, Don, since you brought it up. But you want to be aware that, like Mitch said, there's other runners. So you want to be aware of maybe a second, maybe even a third play on that same play. So you don't want to necessarily focus only, how could I say, on that play that happened. Yeah, you saw the obstruction. Everything went well. You called it obstruction. It's a delayed dead ball, right? But keep in mind it happened, but there's other things going on around the bases as well.
Right, exactly. So obstruction happens a lot when multiple fielders will come in and start wanting to play on the ball. We saw in one of the videos there on the baseball clip where there was probably 4 players around where the runner was coming to. That's where you have to be conscious of it. If it's just 2 fielders with a runner, obstruction usually won't happen. Obstruction in your mind will be when other fielders join in on the chase, right? Because they're trying to cut down that angle, cut down the distance that the runner can run before that ball. 65 feet or 70 feet or 60 feet can be close to 30, 20 feet with multiple fielders, sorry. So yeah, so that will happen when the runner is running back and a fielder basically gets in the way of the runner without the ball. That's when obstruction will happen. And you have to call it right away. What I've seen is exactly, Sarah said, delayed dead ball. You don't kill it, but you signal. Do you keep your hand up the whole time? No. I've seen some officials out there running around with their arm out on the delayed dead ball call. You're going to get tired. So you signal it. It's in your mind that the obstruction happens, and you're going to wait to award it accordingly if it stays on. Can obstruction be waved off? Absolutely. There's too many scenarios that it can be waved off. Once it's waved off in your mind that the person got safely to where they needed to be, or etc., then it's just off in your mind. But you'll keep it on until it's on, and then you'll award bases accordingly. So it's mostly when a fielder will get in the way of the runner and impede their progress towards the bag they're going to. That's obstruction. Mitch, anything else?
Oh, no, thanks. It was both of you addressed the delayed dead ball circumstance, and if a play is being made on the runner at that point, it's declared and stopped. But like Sarah said, you have to be careful. You don't do that with other runners on the bases. And that's I'm glad that you mentioned that and stressed that, because it is a delayed dead ball for a reason. So thank you for addressing that, Don. Thank you, Sarah. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Mitch. This is a topic that we could actually teach probably for a good 45 minutes to an hour at a clinic, as about the proper way to do, like a good way to do a rundown. The first video, right on, Dennis, it does have a couple areas. We're not going to go back through it because of time, but it's a good video to use in your clinics because it shows positioning, communication, possible obstructions, responsibilities. I like it. So we're good there. Any other ones, Scott?
There was one question from Westy. Said in the not so good video, the coach at third base is blocking the umpire to move to the leading edge of third base. What's the call?
Okay, so do we have coaches interference there? That's what you have to have in your minds. Is there interference by the coach? Are you going to communicate with the coach to get out of your way? Myself personally, knowing there, and if I'm going to stay in foul territory or outside, I'm going to be talking to the coach back. That coach has the rights to be where they are, because if they're in the coach's box, and their responsibility is to coach that runner, but you can talk to them. And personally, I wouldn't be in that spot. I'd be on the inside of the diamond like the first video. And then I wouldn't be in that situation of shaking hands with the coach.
There you go. All right. Thank you, folks. Tremendous job.